My rules, big moves. Y'all heavy on the tweeting. I'll disappear a whole season like, who said they looking for me? I'ma make you wait for it. Count down for me. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back to Hold My Heels, the Power of Unapologetic Living. Today, we're on the second episode of the series on allies, co-conspirators, and disruptors. This series will culminate in an episode surrounding the trauma responses of Black women being under or unsupported in the workplace. The final episode of this season will be about Black feminism and the impact it has on systemic racism, which will jumpstart a series of conversations with members of my sister circle in regards to their journey in areas of intersectionality, as previously mentioned. We will be talking to some of my favorite male co-conspirators and disruptors as well, so hold on for that. So I would like to report that someone finally called me and told me that I could stop asking them about going to therapy because they finally went back. Persistence pays off, but I'm sure there are more people who could benefit from some therapy, so find you a good one. I would like to talk about two things that have tickled my pickle. That has been my phrase the last couple of weeks. First is Happy Pride, y'all. Like, I'm so excited. I'm so excited that people get to be who they are in their true authenticity. And I am glad that I can be an ally, an accomplice, and a disruptor to so many people who identify as part of the LGBTQIA+ community. So I hope y'all had a great start to Pride. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about, which I'd be remiss if I didn't speak about the historical nature of last week's events, that man got 34 felony counts, 34 felony guilty counts. Yikes. Like, how do you as the president end up? Okay, you know what? I love good civics and a good government class, but I believe that if you are a felon, you cannot be president. I think. I'm not really, some historian will tell me if that's true or not, but I believe I do remember that. And I wonder, I know that he says that he lives in Florida, and Florida accepts felony status in regards to voting, that whatever state that you became a felon in, they recognize. So I'm not even really sure if he'll be able to vote for himself, which he probably will still do anyway on camera, and then go to jail again for committing another crime. But, tis what it is. So I'm here. I'm here for the foolishness that's coming from this. I am looking forward to all of the felons getting their voting rights back, because I'm sure that people are going to try to pass laws now so that he does not see any punishment and he is able to vote. So there will be some good that comes out of this craziness. I do want you to pay attention to who is going to come out as a co-conspirator or accomplice for him. And it will help you in the realm of politics. I think that it is very important that we vote, and we vote not just in our best interest, but in the best interest of humanity. Because when we think about the lesser of those around us and we do right by them, we also benefit from that rightness. And so I hope that we do not vote in our own best interest, but we think about everyone around us, because that's where we've gotten to at this point. And if you're one of those people that says that voting doesn't matter, I want you to shut up. And I don't usually say shut up a lot, but I would like for you to shut up, because voting does matter. Voting matters on the national level, on the state level, on the city level. Your school board matters. You need to vote every opportunity you get, because people in power make decisions, and that is what holds up racist systems and hurts marginalized people even more. So I want us to think about that. That's the new call to action. And so the first point would be change your driver's license address. I know you moved and you didn't. And so now your voter registration is at your old address, and that's why you don't go vote, because you don't want to go back to your old address neighborhood and do it. So just change your address, or go on to the DMV website and just update it. And they'll ask you, would you like to transfer your voter registration? And the only reason I know this is because I did not change my address. I still officially live in one part of Virginia, but I definitely don't. So I'm always going to be transparent with you, and that's the T. So make sure you're registered to vote in your area. Don't be out here breaking laws. Now, today we're going to talk about some of my favorite things. I don't know why this is one of my favorite topics, that I think because I have benefited from so many people who were co-conspirators for me. So we're going to talk about accomplices and co-conspirators. And remember that I told you last week that accomplices sit in a unique space for me. And we discussed why I felt they sat in a unique space. Before I begin, I would like to correct some language from last week. I misidentified Dr. Jana. They use they, them pronouns. I am deeply apologetic and will do all I can to make sure that I'm using proper pronouns to describe individuals going forward. So please forgive me if you personally know them and you were offended by that. I was offended myself because I have followed their work for so long and I don't know why. I just went into a very cis het place and called them she, her instead of they, them. So I do apologize. If you aren't familiar with Dr. Tiffany Jana, they are the founder of TMI Consulting Incorporated. It's a diversity inclusion management consulting firm that's headquartered in Richmond, Virginia. They wrote a book entitled Subtle Acts of Exclusion, and they frequently write for the Medium. So look for their work. It is fantastic. But I bring that back up because I told you that we would talk more about their work on accomplices and the area that those individuals sit in their quest for allyship. So I would have to say that I feel like the accomplice is truly a unique space. And in doing research, I came across an article, the Equity Dispatch, where it talks about all accomplices are allies, but not all allies are accomplices, because being an accomplice requires overt support. And I think this is why I always had that issue of somebody saying that they were an accomplice or an ally, and there's like that baby step between, because I think that sometimes with being an accomplice, you get to weave in and out of support. And that's not a bad thing because we're growing in our allyship. And so sometimes you do. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. So Dr. Jana, she defines an accomplice as someone who has passed the initial phase. Pause. Dr. Jana, they define someone as an accomplice who has passed the initial phase of allyship and has done the work to understand their role in upholding unjust structures. They ultimately believe that an accomplice is strengthened by underrepresented demographic proximity, but it can be absent. So I want you to think about that. So in Dr. Jana's work, they talk about how as an accomplice, the closer you are to a marginalized group, the more that you can understand, which really and truly starts to push you towards being a co-conspirator. An ally, a lot of times, is not proximity close to issues. And so they're able to say, oh, I support that cause. I support those people. I support this issue. But they get to pick and choose when they do it. Like if it's, at a family dinner where everybody is, very conservative, they may not speak up and say anything because it's an uncomfortable situation for them. And so they lean back into, I support it, but I don't have to support it everywhere, which once again is not a bad thing because we all ebb and flow through the phases of allyship. And this is highlighted by Dr. Nadhira Hill. She basically said, nothing about us without us, like when she talked about co-conspirators. If you are in a space where you have, seek, and create meaningful relationships, and you're able to show up for marginalized people, you do a lot more. You're able to support them in a way because you're able to fully understand what they are going through and how they're going through it. And you're more there to listen and be active in your support. You're able to put some skin into the game. I align myself to the thinking of these two scholars because I do know that we weave in and out. Like I said before, you really come to the realization that co-conspirators have to be attentive to the places that they are allowed into, and it requires great attention to planning and supporting. You just can't be willy-nilly. It's not like, an ally is like, I'm going to use a bit of a sensitive analogy. I posted on Twitter, Happy Pride Day to all of my friends, right? So in that situation, I'm an ally. I'm allowing people to see, I believe that people should be able to love who they want to love, and they should be able to be who they are. But in this space, I have to remember, what have I done to make space for them, my friends who are represented in a marginalized group? What have I done to make space and to be able to push forward their support and make sure that they are welcomed and valued in the spaces they are in? So I want you to think about that. Like, that's the difference between an ally and accomplice. Just giving somebody a high five or changing your Facebook profile picture or posting something on the internet does not mean that you've got skin in the game. It's just you saying, hey, I'm gonna, do this thing for them. I think back to when I go to conferences, I try to spend a lot of time in spaces with people who are marginalized. I am beginning my allyship journey with people who are part of the LGBTQIA plus community. And so I know that I have to spend more time with them to really hear and understand, because their struggle is not the same as the struggle that I have as a Black woman. I know that there have been times that I have been misclassified as a woman who might represent myself as a lesbian. And I've had to explain to people, I do not. I definitely understand some of the things that they go to. And I have lots of friends who are lesbians, but I myself am not a lesbian. And I think that is a very tragic thing that happens when people become allies, is it's like, oh, are you this because you are fighting for their cause? No. I'm fighting for their cause because they're marginalized. And if they're marginalized, I am also marginalized, and it impacts me and it impacts the world that I live in. I don't want anybody to ever feel like they have to identify themselves to me, or that I have to identify myself to other people. But as I told you in the very first episode, a beard and a full set of teeth. I'm dumb as a box of rocks. So, that's my downfall. And I'm here for it. But I think love is love, and I want to be there for the people that I believe in. So I think that's why I love the whole accomplice, co-conspirator, disruptor idea, is because it also helps push me into understanding, if I want to show up for people, I have to do more work in order to show up fully for people. And by me explaining to people, I am doing this because I believe in the cause that they have. I believe in the rights that they want. That it's not me centering myself and me being able to say, no, this isn't about me. This is about the people that I support. I think that's what really pushes you to be a co-conspirator, is you say, I'm not getting anything out of this. Like, there's nothing that comes out of me being like, yes, happy Pride, or we need to make sure that we have voices of all marginalized people at the table. All that does for me is say, I want to hear those voices. I want to be able to support. I want to be able to put that energy into a room. But I don't personally get anything from that. And I think that's the difference between an ally, an accomplice, and ultimately you becoming a co-conspirator, and in the end, a disruptor. So I think about this. Lila Watson made a statement, and I think this quote resonates with me so much. She said, "If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." So think about that. I don't want anybody to come and show up and help me. I want people to come and show up and make change with me. Like, stand beside me in your privileged state and support me in the next place. Like, use your privilege to liberate all of us. And, I think back to 2014 when Cheska Ramsey, she did the video on the 5 tips of being an ally. And she talked about, allyship is it's truly a verb. It means that, individuals using their privileged identity to disrupt oppression while working alongside people of marginalized groups for equity and social justice. So think about that as a co-conspirator, as a disruptor that we will get to next week. It is about you using your privilege in spaces to make other people's lives better. So that's what it means to me to be a co-conspirator instead of an accomplice. I feel like, I'm going to use this bad term. I feel like in the criminal world, an accomplice is somebody that's going to rat you out. Like, y'all are going to do some dirt together, but when they get you in the room and they hand them a Coke and a bucket of chicken, because that's what happens on First 48 is they get something to eat and they get a drink and they rat. They tell on their mamas, they tell on kids who did stuff in the 5th grade, they just tell on everybody. But I feel like co-conspirators are the people who, they were so entwined with you in creating whatever was happening, that to tell on you is to tell on themselves. And it's just like, no, I'm not going to do that because I was in there with them. I believe in what we were doing. Do not go out here and commit no crimes with nobody. That is not what I said. I know how people like to twist words. Please do not be a criminal, because I'm not going to visit you. I'm not going to put nothing on your books, and I'm not going to put free you till it's backwards on my Instagram. I'm not doing it. So do not commit crimes. But I want you to think about that if you know criminal people, which I do. An accomplice is somebody that you'd be like, I'm not really doing nothing sketchy with them because they're going to tell. But it's like my best friend. Like when people send you the thing on Facebook where they're like, if you go to jail, what's your best friend going to say? Well, they're going to be in there with me because we more than likely did it together. And that's what I want a co-conspirator to be, is somebody that in the thick of it, in the heat of it, they're right there standing with me, not afraid to move on. An example that I saw online that I liked was they talked about freedom riders and how those people were truly co-conspirators. Like they went into the thick of the civil rights movement and worked alongside, Black people to say, I'm going to fight this fight, even though I can sit at this counter and I can eat without you. If I can't eat with you, I don't want to eat here either. And so I want us to think about us as co-conspirators. So in that research, it really pushed me more to think about what I needed to do to be a better ally. In a lot of places, my allyship needs to grow in a lot of places. And so I'm ready to do that. I also want you to think about this as you begin to move from ally, accomplice into co-conspirator. Co-conspirators, they put themselves on the line, not just through their reputation, but their assets and their connections. Are you using your money and your social capital to support other marginalized groups? If not, I want you to think about that just for a little bit and to move into that space. So the lived experience this week is funny because I told an individual that I was going to shout them out this week. And they were like, do not blow up my spot. And I was like, you're right. So I'm not going to blow up their spot, but I'm going to highlight a few of my co-conspirators because I do appreciate them. And I do know that a lot of the work that I do, not just in regards to equity, but in the work, my daily work, who I am as a parent, who I am as a woman, I have lots of people who are rallying with me in order for me to be successful. And I think that's what really highlights good co-conspirators for me. And before I go on, I was leaving the house today and I told my son I was going to go do my podcast, record my podcast. And he said, oh, will you shout me out, Mom? And I said, why would I shout you out? I was like, you don't even listen to my podcast. He said, no, I do listen. I turn it on and I walk off. And I just kind of looked at him like, what? And he was like, it's a passive listen. And I was like, oh, these are politicians I'm raising. And so my daughter comes out of her room and she's like, I tell everybody about your podcast and I tell people to listen to it. I even told my teachers. And I'm like, whoa, why are you telling? Like, I panicked for a second. And it made me think, like, I was like, oh, my daughter is a co-conspirator and my son is an ally. Like, he's like, I'm not really putting much skin in the game. I'm a listen, but it is what it is. And my daughter's like, we're all in, Mom. Girl power. We doing this. Like, I'm telling everybody. And I'm like, okay, well, thanks. Appreciate it. So as I rode in the car, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I was going to tell a particular lived experience. There is a woman when I first started my career in education who rallied behind me and really helped me grow as a literacy teacher, as a teacher, and basically as a human being. And she was an older white woman in a space where she was a minority. And I can remember so many times that she put her social capital on the line for me with those in leadership. And it meant a lot to me. I just know that it's been amazing. And I think back to when I first started working, I worked in a law library And I remember my boss sitting me down, older white woman, and she looks at me and she says, you can do whatever you want to do if you have the right people in your team. She was like, so how are you going to build your team? And that stuck with me for a long time. And so as I've built my team, I've made sure that having co-conspirators meant that I was a co-conspirator to them as well, because you can't give something and not get something in a lot of places, because in some places I sit in a seat of privilege. And so I want to make sure that I use it when I can. So there's a particular co-conspirator who, he is absolutely hilarious. He's a hidden gem. Like, you never know what he's thinking or how he's thinking it, but like, he's always working towards making sure that that right is being done. And he's just real cool, calm, cool, collected. Like, you'll never see him fired up in public, right? But in private, like with people that he's comfortable with, he'll be like, no, because that's not right, because they are, plotting on this, or, they are being racist with this. And it's like, he gets it. And he's not just a co-conspirator for the Black experience. He's a co-conspirator for women. Like, he is the kind of person, the kind of man you want on your team. And I have seen him in places, even though he definitely sits in a position of privilege being a white man. I have seen him be marginalized in spaces and him roll with it and be like, no, I get it. I understand. In this space, I am not the person in power, and that's okay. Like, I don't have to always be, and this is how the world should be. So I absolutely adore him. I think about an instance where some things were happening, and he literally called me and was like, hey, I just want to let you know that these things are happening, and this is how I'm trying to help you, even though, you're not knowledgeable about what's happening behind your back. These are the things that I'm saying. These are the things that I'm doing. These are the ways that I'm using my power to support you and push for what needs to happen. And so I will always value not only his friendship, but his allyship in this instance. I also think about, there is a Black man who has been a very big co-conspirator in my life. And when the chips have fallen, he has always been there to help me pick them up. And even sometimes when he helps me pick them up, he will say to me, you could have done this better. And this is how you can navigate the situation differently in the future. And I love that, because I think a lot of times, like last week, I told you that there are a lot of times I would choose the bear over men. And there are male co-conspirators in my life that I know they'd help me fight the bear. They'd help me fight the bear. They'd help me fight the man. They'd help me fight the system, because they've consistently shown that. And it means a lot to me. And so this is a little bit of a, not to like blow up people's spots, because sometimes your co-conspirators need to be the quietest people in the room, because once their hand is shown in situations, then the power that they have is kind of taken away. I also think about, there is a group of about 5 individuals who I don't want to call them my ride or dies, because I don't ever want them to get to the place where they feel like they've got to die on a hill for me. But when I tell you that these 5 people have rode for me in some of the strangest situations where like I'm just going about my life oblivious, and they'll come to me like, girl, did you know? And I'm like, no, I didn't even know. I didn't see it coming. And they're like, well, we got it. We're holding you on all fronts. And it's a mix of Black women, Black men, white women, white men. And this group makes me just like jump for joy, because to see them come together for a common cause of a marginalized group, it's like, this is what it looks like when we do life right. This is what it looks like when we lean into each other and we use our power appropriately. So if you have co-conspirators in your life, I want you to understand that they may be marginalized in some areas, and that you need to step it up and provide allyship to them when necessary. I'm also going to give you, this is something I don't typically do, but I'm going to give you some things that I want you to research and use. There is a website called greatlakesequity.org. I would love for you to go there and just learn more about what it means to be an ally and go through allyship. And then also Harvard does some really good projects that you could get into. It's projects.iq.harvard.edu. They've got some good stuff that I think that is good if you're trying to grow your experience in allyship to become a co-conspirator and a disruptor ultimately. So I think those are some good places to start. Also, researching Feminista Jones, looking at the work of Dr. Jana, looking at the work of Alicia Garza. Those places really put you into some good spots. So as we're closing, I want you to enjoy the privileges you have and use them to better the world around you, and really dig deep into your allyship bag and see who you can be a co-conspirator for. Because sometimes a marginalized group is a work group or a friend group or a social group. And it doesn't have to be necessarily based on race. It could be based on any marginalized status. So as you continue to grow and move, I want you to remember that every step you take is a testament to your strength and grace. Keep striding forward, hold your head up high, and never forget you've got someone to hold your heels when it's needed. I hope you conquer your world today. Until next time, stay empowered, stay you, and slay in your own personal way.
On my time. Yeah, I'ma make you pay for it.